Hi there everybody, Boyd here with you again, and here is a look at another one of the Halloween builds that I've just finished up for our Model Shop community group build this year. This is the third kit that I've worked on. It's the MPC Strange Change Vampire Kit, originally put out by Fun Dimensions back in the 70s. They repopped this kit a couple of years ago. They've also got the Strange Change Mummy and the Time Machine Strange Change. They're all really cool kits, and had a lot of fun working on it. It has a cool little action where you see when you close the lid on the coffin here that the figure goes from looking the way it does on the right there, the vampire, to the way it looks on the left with the decomposed skeleton. And so it's pretty cool, and had a lot of fun putting it together. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I did here to finish it up. I painted the coffin. I decided to paint the coffin kind of ornate looking. You have a lot of choices as far as how you want to paint this. You can make it look like wood, or you can, do a lot of different things. But looking at the box art there, since the vampire looks like he's kind of a aristocrat-looking guy with his fancy tuxedo and all that, I figured he'd have a pretty ornate-looking coffin. So I decided to do this in black and gold and make it look like a, fancy coffin. And just painted it all with craft acrylic paints. It's antique gold here on all the trim detail, and just regular satin black on the rest of it. And took a little while to paint all this gold script on here, but just a little bit of dry brushing technique, and then I went over it with a black wash after that to kind of blend everything together, and came out pretty good. I mounted it on this little piece of wood here, which I've done in a gloss coat, and I painted some different shades of gray and dark gray and off-white streaks onto it to kind of try to make it look like marble. The coffin all by itself just looked kind of plain, and it sat kind of down low too much, so I just decided to make it look like it was sitting in a mausoleum, and that added a little bit something extra to it, and I glued the coffin down on the top of it so it's nice and secure and everything. So that's what I came up with for that. A couple little mods that I made on the coffin before I go any further I want to talk about. When you open the lid on it, it wants to flop all the way over and fall too far open. So I just made a little bracket out of styrene here and painted it gold and mounted it on the center hinge, and that keeps the lid from going too far over, and that helped out quite a bit. When we open the coffin up, we see we have the figure of the undead vampire in there. And when you flip it over, he goes totally dead. So it's pretty cool. They got this little mechanism in here, and I want to talk about that a little bit. The instructions aren't like really clear on how the whole thing goes together, so you're going to kind of have to play around with it a little bit. There's a little cam mechanism in there, and they don't really tell you which way it goes. And I had to, the first time I tried it, I had it on backwards, and it didn't want to spin over, and it kept getting stuck and all that, and I finally figured out what the problem was and turned it around, and it started working fine. And then I put a little bit of grease on the pivot points there where it spins, and that helped it work a lot freer, and made sure it flipped properly every time. What I also did here is I took a little bit of felt and glued it on this little peg that activates the flip mechanism button down here. Otherwise it kept scraping the paint off of that all the time. So just a couple little mods. But it's a really fun little kit to work on. It turns out it works really good. You got some rubber bands in there that go from the head to the toe here, and you just basically take this key that it comes with, and before you do anything, you kind of stick it in this little slot here on the end, and you wind it up about 10 or 15 times. You can tell when it's starting to get tight because the key will start to flex a little bit, and that's when you want to stop. And that'll give you a good, probably 10 to 15 spins of the figure, and that's plenty. So, but here's a look at the paintwork. As I said, you can paint this kit, in a variety of colors that you choose for your own taste. I decided to go with this kind of royal purple on the inside since it was kind of a fancy coffin, and then on the figure itself, I just again used all craft acrylic paints to paint him, and I started off with a just a regular flat black on the clothes, and then took some artist chalk and just went over the wrinkles and everything to make it look like it had a little bit of definition. On the skin tones, I painted it with a really, really light gray to begin with, the face and the hands, And then I used some of this game color wash here, which is a really, it works really good for these little figures, and just kind of went over his face and his hands and everything, and that brought a little bit of that, really ghastly looking detail out of it. And I went, a little heavier on it than you normally would go on a regular face or whatever, and it gave that nice little contrast there. It made his eyes look kind of bloodshot and all that, and his hands look kind of weird. And so I'm pretty happy with that. I did a little wash on the inside of the whole coffin here, and just to bring out some of that, pleating detail and all that. But so here we go. Let's close the lid, and we'll see how the change happens. You want to push this down nice and tight. You got to kind of push on this corner a little bit, and you'll hear that little noise where it makes, kind of da-da-da-da, and then you'll hear the figure has flipped over. And when you open it back up, now we see we got the fully decomposed figure of the skeleton vampire. And again, same basic painting detail on him, only I went a little bit more bold on the artist chalks on the clothing to make it look, really old and worn out. And then I also added a stake that's driven into his heart there. I figured that's the reason that he's actually really dead now. And you get the rat, and you get a couple of scorpions to put in there. So I just threw those in there kind of at random, and did my paint work on the skull and the hands and everything. That paintwork there is just starting off with kind of it's called AC Flesh. It's sort of a light tan color, Delta Ceramcoat color, and then just some raw sienna, and a little bit of wash on it, and then a little bit of black on the eyes, and a little wash here and there on the hands and everything, and that's what I came up with. But I'm really pleased with the whole kit. It was really fun to build. Had a good time working on it, other than trying to figure out the instructions on the mechanism itself, because they don't give you any, like I said, they don't give you any like really clear pictures of how it should go together. I felt kind of embarrassed that I used to be a car mechanic for years, and I couldn't figure out how to work this simple little thing, but got it figured out anyway, and it works really good. As I said, they also make the Strange Change Mummy, which that one's really cool because it has the sarcophagus that you can have a lot of fun painting. It looks like King Tut's sarcophagus, the gold with a really cool blue trim and all that. So I might pick up that kit a little bit later. And then there's the Time Machine version, which is quite a big kit. It's got kind of a big dome, and the whole scene turns when you open and close it. So that one's a cool one too. And all these kits are still easy to find and everything. So, but let's change them back one more time here for you, and close the lid and open it back up, and we go back to our original vampire. So it's a really fun little kit. It kind of reminds me of the the Hex Marks the Spot kit that I just finished up here too, with the moving pirate and all that. So kind of neat that they got a little action going on in there. These kits are limited edition. They repopped it recently, and they're only going to make so many of them. So if you want one, I'd grab one before they get kind of rare, and of course then the prices go way up. I got this for a little over 20 bucks, so not too bad. But I had a lot of fun doing another Halloween build here. So I've done 3 of them so far, and I actually decided to pick up one more. I've got this Munsters kit over here, the Munsters Living Room. It's the original Aurora kit that's been redone by Polar Lights. And I was watching a good friend of mine, Chris Cortell, who has the Classic Plastic 101 YouTube channel, and he built this whole thing up, I guess a couple of years ago now, and he did a really awesome job on it with all the lighting and the detail they put into it, and it's pretty inspiring to see that. So I'm going to go ahead and build this up and use some of his ideas and put a little lighting, and then put a few of my own ideas into it. So I'm going to save this one here for October, and then start working on that for my final. And I'll put this in the Sci-Fi Fantasy Halloween group build that's going on that Kenny's running over there. I wanted to take part in that too. So I kind of go overboard on Halloween, but it's a lot of fun. It's my favorite holiday of the year. So anyway, you guys will see that one here coming along pretty soon. So there's our Strange Change Vampire. I hope you enjoyed checking it out. Had a lot of fun working on it, and we'll catch up with you guys again. I'm going to be putting some new projects here on the bench. We got our Star Trek original series phaser rifle and some other cool stuff coming up. Some model kits we're going to be working on, so I hope you'll tune in and check it out. Until then, take it easy, everybody. We'll talk to you later, and happy modeling, everyone.